Hi everyone. So I made a survey a few days ago uh, and asked a lot of the Dominion community what the most hated attacks for them were. And of course there are different reasons to hate an attack. Maybe it's because you hate being hit by it, or you just hate how the games develop with the card in it. And I left that up to you. Maybe it's even because you hate it because it's so weak and doesn't do anything. Or it's super swingy and it feels like whoever gets lucky more wins. So yeah, here I want to present you the results of the top 10 most voted attacks there. And I had over 150 votes, so just so that you can put the amount of votes each card got into perspective. The ranked 9 and 10 actually had the exact same amount of votes with 19, and it was one from the base expansion and one from the Intrigue expansion, so the first two Dominion sets that ever got released. One is Militia, which reduces the hand size, and I can see that this attack is annoying because you kind of start with a lot fewer hands every turn. And the other one is Minion, which probably the most frustrating thing about it is that you lose your good hand and draw a bad hand back up, and it can be very frustrating if that happens, but of course it could also be the other way around. On average you draw a worse hand than before because 4 cards is worse than 5. But it surely feels a lot worse sometimes when you draw into junk. So yeah, totally reasonable picks here, I think. Let's continue and go up to rank 8. There we have Ambassador from Seaside. And this one is a super powerful card. You often have to open it, often even with 2 of them, because it's a junking attack as well as thinning. And it's not trashing, but it returns copies of your cards to the supply. And often leads to the situation where one player gets completely shut out because they get 2 or 3 junk cards every turn and can't return as much, and one player gets thin. And the problem with this probably is that it just never stops junking. Once you got rid of your starting estates and coppers, you can buy curse and give them 10 curses, and then you can give them over 40 coppers if you so like. So this card really never really loses usefulness in the attacking part. Other junkers like which the curses run out, but here it just gets super miserable for one player very often. Rank 7 is Urchin, and its counterpart, or its second form, so to say, Mercenary. And the problem with Urchin is Mercenary is such a powerful card to get, often the only trashing and as well as in discard attack, which makes it much harder for the opponent to trash. And thus the card has a big benefit for whoever gets to Mercenary first. And yeah, you usually just have to open double Urchin and hope to collide them turn 3 or 4. And if one player does and the other doesn't, it's a huge advantage for the player who got the collision. Of course, you can also hope to collide it with another attack. Like an attack that costs 4, or Sea Hack or Enchantress or something. But usually it's just the best chances to have it with another Urchin, because they give +1 card, +1 action. I doubt that the actual attack from Urchin is relevant for, or is the reason for anyone hating on that. This one got 24 votes. So yeah, probably it's because its Mercenary is so strong you have to go for it, and it's so swingy to get the collision early. next rank with 26 votes is the Knights. And this one is also reasonable because you hate the situation where the other player wins the Knight split and you can't just do anything else. Sometimes there's options in the kingdom that doesn't cost 3 or 6 and is immune to trashing, maybe Fool's Gold or something, but very often if the opponent can play 2 knights on you every turn, there is no coming back from that. The best option then is to hit resign or, I don't know, give up in real life and play the next game. Rank 5, and now we got a big boost from the votes to 36, is Cultist. And this one doesn't surprise me either. It's a super swingy card and it junks a lot faster than Witch, even though the cards it gives out, the ruins, are not as bad as curses. But let's be honest, they are pretty bad. And usually you don't want to waste an action on those cards. The problem with Cultist is that it's also very likely that one player gets like 7 or 8 ruins and the other gets a lot less, because they are able to chain themselves. So you just get the first player advantage and start hitting the Cultist pile as fast as possible, and then as first player you give them ruins before they give you ruins, so they are less likely to collide their Cultists and you trigger better shuffles without ruins. And I mean, it's also possible that the second player can do this with bad shuffles for the first player, but basically the player who gets to play more Cultists early is more likely to play more Cultists later, and that way give out all the junk in 2 or 3 turns. Rank 4 is a big surprise to me. I wouldn't have expected Torturer to be this high up, but I can see it being annoying, especially in unexperienced groups where the players are really eager to not gain curses, or in multiplayer games where it's really annoying to get hit by this early on 2 or 3 times. Other than that, it's one card where it's again very likely that the curses don't split even, because one player just has to take the curses or gives up the whole turn. And man, don't give up your turn. That's then you can basically concede anyway, unless the turn was dead. Like if you have a that turn, then of course you can discard your hand and just hope for the next, but it won't get better most likely with the torture attacks that come in. So yeah, usually you don't want to discard your hand to it. And 41 votes, that's impressively high. Rank 3 is one of my personal least favorite cards, the Mounty Bank. It's just hands out so much junk on one play with a curse and a copper, and it's hard to keep up with the trashing if the trashing isn't excellent. And also it's a decent effect with the +2 coins, so it allows to pick up more Mounty Banks or more 5-cost actions. And it's also swingy. One player has the one curse they have in their deck every time you play it and discards it, and you don't, and you get a lot of more junk, and the deck gets really messy and you can't really play anything else than the money deck. So yeah, rank 3 deserved. And on rank 2 is another one of my hate cards, the Swindler. This one is probably voted that high because it's so swingy. You can get it early on, you can even open with 2 of them, and then you trash a random card from top of the deck and replace it with an equal cost card. And while copper into curse isn't exactly what you want, I usually don't mind it. that part of the attack because you have the an equal amount of stop cards in your deck and just lose a little bit of economy and a victory point. But where it really gets ugly is when your opening buys, like a 3 or 4 cost card, gets trashed into something useless. And the worst thing of all is, of course, hitting the 5 cost cards and turning them into duchies early on, where the points don't matter. If that happens more than once, or it happens at an unopportune time, then it's almost GG. And you, of course, get the bad luck and hit their estates, or even worse, you can hit their shelters if you start with shelters and just help them even. So that's one super swingy card. It makes it almost impossible to plan what your deck wants to look like, and the game just becomes into a clown fiesta where you play swindlers every turn and try to get more swindlers sometimes. Some of the games where you have maybe even villages or something to play more swindlers. So yeah, ridiculous card. And now, before we get to our number one, maybe you guessed it already, but let's get some honorable mentions in. So here I have to excuse myself. I initially forgot to include the out of supply cards into the survey, so followers and warriors. I forgot after I got about half of the responses. Some people complained that they weren't there, and so I added them late. And of course they couldn't keep up with the votes, but I estimated how many votes they would have gotten. So followers is the attack that you get if you win a tournament, and it's the only attack in the prizes and has a pretty good effect with you gaining an estate and the other player gaining a curse. So it's a 2 VPs difference there. The stop cards are equal, so you junk yourself just as well as you junk them, but mostly it's because the VP difference that is pretty big. And of course you also make them discard down to 3 cards in hand. And if you are the only one with access to such a powerful attack and with a discard attack, that can of course be very annoying. So I guess most of the hate on this card is because it's just one player is able to get it. And warrior, like probably everyone who has played with the page line that goes up to champion, has experienced why warrior is so hated, because warrior can trash the opponent's warrior, and at that point, there's often no coming back if that happens and you don't have another warrior. And people say, man, just get 2 pages, but even then, if your first warrior that you were about to advance into the champion line gets trashed and you lose like 2 or 3 turns up to champion, that can already be game deciding. So even if you had another warrior or another page line coming up to warrior, even then the attack is super hard if it hits your warrior. And let's not even mention that the second warrior can get trashed too. I once had an opponent playing his warrior, revealing 2 cards from me, and they were both my warriors. This feels so bad. And another honorable mention, I for fun included some cards in the survey that are not really attacks, but feel like attacks. And possession is just in general one of the most hated cards, I guess, not because it's an attack, but because the effect is so ridiculous that you can make a turn for the other player. Of course, there are restrictions that the card you gain, and the cards you trash, they come back into their deck at the end of the game. But there's so much crazy stuff that you can do with it. You can use it with Ambassador or Masquerade to pass over good cards. There's Haunted Woods, where you can force them into a dud. Other cards where you can trigger a bad shuffle for them and have them dud. So many crazy cards. And of course, let's not forget that you can play multiple possessions a turn and the games just last forever. And you have to look at your opponent taking 3 turns with your own deck I hate this card too. And it's also the first card that got banned because of people not liking it from the online implementation and rated games there. And now we get to the #1 most hated attack in Dominion. It's Ghost Ship with 50 votes, just as many as Possession. So they both would share the same place if Possession was an attack. And this one is another kind of discard attack, but not really, because you have to put cards on top of your deck so that you... so with Militia you could discard your 2 worst cards, but here, if you discard your 2 worst cards, they are either in your next hand or you are about to draw them, and this card forces you into a dot or something. This card makes the games incredibly slow. Personally, I don't mind it too much, but I can totally see why it gets the hate. Yeah, it makes games super slow. If one player is able to get an early Ghost Ship and can run away with it, it's super hard to come back because you lose your ability to get through your shuffles. That also means that you get the cards you buy later than you usually would, while the opponent just can start with their 5 cards every turn and progress in the shuffles a lot faster. And so even if you then get to buy your Ghost Ship, it could just as well mean that you have to wait 5 more turns until you first play it. Ghost Ship incredibly rewarding for the player who gets it early and can play it often. And yeah, super powerful effect. So that was it. There you have it. My results of the top 10 most hated attack cards of Dominion. And thanks for watching. See you in the next video.